Well, hello everyone. PL Stewart here, back with six elemental authors interviews. Good day, good night, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. It is 7 p.m. here, Eastern Time in Canada. And tonight I am joined by, someone who needs no introduction, my favorite author, a wonderful person, and someone who I believe we will all agree is iconic in the fantasy literary sphere. None other than Janny Wurts. Janny Wurts, how are you?
I'm wonderful. So nice to be back.
It is so nice to catch up with you. Already we're having people stop by. The wonderful, amazing Chimapo, who is such a fantastic supporter of your work, Janny, and just a great member of the community. Chibo, thank you so much for stopping by. You're amazing. We have another luminary, none
Oh
other
boy.
than
Hi Philip.
the
Hi Chibipupo. Hi Philip.
Dr.
Oh, only
Philip
15
Chang.
minutes. Oh, are you coming to ICFA this year, Philip?
I hope people say yes. Um, I actually plan to be there myself.
Oh, cool.
So Debbie and I, so that it should be, it'll be my first one. I'll have to get you veterans to show me as a rookie, the way around there. But yeah, I'm excited, looking forward to it. That's the plan. So hopefully Philip will be going there as well. Um, Philip says, I would love to go to ICFA, especially if you two are there. Yeah, it would be amazing to meet. But I can imagine just meeting you and Philip, and hopefully people like AP at
Jake
the
is
same
coming
time.
too. Jake is
Oh,
coming too.
oh wow, that's yeah. That I mean, I would that would be just amazing. The experience I had in Glasgow, meeting so many incredible people from the writing community in person for the first time was, yeah, it was life changing. So I'm hopeful that I'll get to meet you all as well. So Janny, let's catch up a bit, and let's catch up now, post publication of Song of the Mysteries. So clearly, on previous lives that I've been with you on, we've talked a lot about the sense of accomplishment you felt with, of course, the monumental, achievement of finishing your final book of your iconic series. So where are you now? Where are you at headspace wise? Where are you at writing wise? What comes next? What's been the response to the Song of the Mysteries? How are things going in general?
Well, I still haven't cleaned my closets. I figured I was going to do that job because I hadn't touched it for decades and it's too boring. So what I did was I finished all of the artwork that I owed Grim Oak Press for the Mistress of the Empire. So 8 interiors plus a chapter head plus a full color oil painting for the cover. So that took a bit of time since the song came out. And when that was done, I plunged into a nautical fantasy standalone that I'd been wanting to get to for years. I'd sort of written a couple of chapters and had a whole folder full of notes. So I've got now 5 chapters written and polished and a full outline, and that's gone out under submission. So we'll see what becomes of it. And then I dug into the back history of the Etherean universe, which I'm digging into several short stories and pieces of short fiction that are connected with that universe, all different periods of time, significant moments in history. So that's what I've been working on. And there's paper all over the room in folders and file folders and bits and stuff. And Don's in the framing room going crazy. He's framing everything for a big show he's got coming up in October. So we've been busy.
Wow. Philip says closets can be filled with mysteries. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's a lot of dust, a lot of cat hair, and a lot of things that, like, I'm never going to wear that again. Needs to be cleared out. So I'll get to it, but not today.
so is there anything you can tell us about this very exciting news about a nautical fantasy? Is there anything you can tell us about it at all? Any
Well, it takes place on a small, well, about a 75-foot schooner. The The ship is styled after the schooner Wolf, which Don and I both crewed on. We sailed to the Keys and did some historical festivals, fired off some cannon, had a good time. And we know the captain, we know the people who own it. So it has a motley crew of various people that come together, and sometimes they mix and sometimes they don't mix. And it's a bit lighthearted. It's quite raunchy. It's fun. It has some high stakes stuff that's going to build, and it's sort of like one pickle to another until the real threat of high stakes comes to the surface. So it's a lot of fun because I know the material, I know the sailing, I know the boat, and it's really fun to play with some characters in a more lighthearted vein. So there's a lot of banter and a lot of crazy stuff. So we'll see if it finds a home.
Well, it sounds phenomenal. I have zero doubt that it will find a home in some form or fashion. Quickly, that Sarah says, hello, so nice to see you both. Hey, Sarah, thank you so much for coming by. We really appreciate it. And Chibro says, I love the nautical elements you incorporated in your books, so I can't wait for this one. I echo that sentiment, Chibro. I cannot wait. Of course, Janny is so knowledgeable about all things nautical and so many other topics. You know, we're not even going to go into things like bagpiping and horses, but yes, with your background, Jenny, with sailing, etc., I know that there's going to be a sense of authenticity.
Oh, there'll be complaints because, you know, nautical terms. Oh my God, I pared them back, but still, you know, to me, it doesn't do a book any good if you have the experience. Put it in there, because then the reader is going to go on that experience and they're going to take a piece of that adventure with them, and it will be real.
Yeah, what happened to, why is it I love books that send me scrambling for a thesaurus, that send me scrambling, you know, to look up a term, to do some mini research within, you know, my reading, to figure out what this means if I don't know what it means. I think that's part of learning, that's part of growing, that's part of the joy of reading, is being educated while you read it. And I hope people still feel that way. You know, so I, for one, am looking forward to loving your work, and if necessary, and if I don't understand something, you know, looking it up. Right?
Times are really different. I mean, people say, "Oh my gosh, this book sends me the dictionary." Growing up, I read the library, and we didn't go running for the dictionary every time we found a word we didn't know. You got the meaning from the context. And you got the meaning from the context by reading lots of books and seeing that same word used in the context at which it's used, and you learned the meaning from the context of the book. Now, when it's so easy, everybody's got a phone in their hand. They can look up a word just like that, and yet now is when you get the big complaints about, oh my gosh, there's too many words. So, you know, go figure, isn't life interesting? Because it's never been easier to look up a word. On the other hand, we grew up when we didn't bother looking up a word. You took your book out into the woods and you read till the sun went down, and you didn't have a dictionary in your back pocket.
And I love Phil's comment. Someday Janny Wurts can write a novel about a bagpipe playing horse that sails around the world.
I'll leave that one to you, Phil.
But seriously, it's amazing that one person has so much depth of knowledge in so many realms. And I totally agree. Jenny, as I touched upon, you know, you are a Renaissance person. That's the best way I can describe you.
I get bored easily. I get bored really easily, and if I'm really easily distracted, oh, look at that cool thing over there. You know, it's like curiosity killed the cat, but it also saved them. And it's my curiosity that's led me in all of these directions. You know, somebody wrote me a note the other day saying, what book do I look up? How did they navigate in, you know, X century? Well, that changed depending on whether they had good chronometers, you know, what kind of instruments they had. But I said, you know, you really don't need to know that. There's this book I've got sitting right here. I love books. Emergency Navigation. This is a modern book, but it tells you how to navigate with no compass and no instruments. Cool book. because it can be done. You don't need anything. You just need knowledge.
But that's something that's typically acquired over a lifetime.
Well, this
And
guy wrote this whole book on multiple different ways to navigate without a compass, without instruments, without a chronometer. And it would get you there. It wouldn't pinpoint accurately get you there, but it would get you there. So there's so much knowledge in the world, and that's what I find so exciting is it's all in books, or it's in somebody's head, or it's in a museum, or it's in an archaeological dig. There is so much knowledge to be found, and all you have to do is dig for it.
do you feel that, especially when you finished Song of the Mysteries, that was there a feeling of a drain, a brain drain, having applied so much, not just knowledge, but effort to writing this mammoth series that you wanted to go? I know you said you're writing shorts about Athera, but is there a conscious desire now to go in a different direction, perhaps write
Oh,
something
yeah. Well, I
shorter?
get bored easily. So the little standalone that I just sent out is absolutely what the doctor ordered. I've never had so much fun writing in my life. It's very easy to write because there wasn't this huge burden of stuff to be carried and wrapped up and figured and make everything dovetail and come together with the sword of Damocles over your neck, which is your publisher is not going to publish it if it gets too long. So I really had a space constraint where I had to pull it all in under the wire. So did I feel a letdown when I was done? No, nothing but elation, because for all these years that I've had the inner panic of what if I don't finish? All the fans that write you, well, you're just going to drop dead like such and so did, and you're not going to finish. And who would you pick to finish it for you? And all, and my mother, is it finished yet? She wasn't going to read it anyway, but is it finished yet? Do you know how many decades I've been dragging that clanking can around behind me? So the relief that, yeah, I did it and I got the whole thing down and I got it down in the shape and the form with the impact that I wanted and all the pieces were in place. It was a triumph for me. And that wave of euphoria lasted for a year or more when from when I finished the draft, because it was all there and I knew nothing could shake it. So yeah, I did it against all the odds, against all the setbacks, against all the ramming against walls and corporate politics and all the things that have happened to publishing, which is a big list since 1993 when this came out, an even bigger list since 1972 when I conceived of it. And there weren't barriers. Authors back then, you got an editor, you had that editor for 40 years. That was your career. Those days are so long gone. So I guess there was euphoria because I did it and I did it. There was sadness that there was no 40-year editor to crack the champagne with and compare stories. So I missed that. You know, who was left that was there at the beginning? Nobody. Because I didn't marry Don until I was about halfway through. Yeah, so it's been me all along.
Well, I can say, and Chibupo had said, was so ecstatic when you posted you finished the manuscript for Song, and I knew for one never doubted that you would. I don't think any of us that
I
know
don't
you,
either,
Jenny.
but that weight of it isn't done yet, and the relief that not only did it get done, but it got done with the punch that it had to have. Because it's a tall order to make it supersede everything else and to bring it all in and still surprise people on the last page. So I had just set a very high bar. So yeah, I'm still happy that that's behind me.
And are you? I can tell you that the impact was like a ton of bricks for me in a positive way, in the most positive way. The gravitas of that ending, it's hard for me to even encapsulate in words. But you know, how do you feel, Janny, about the response from not only your diehard fans, the Chupos out there, you know, people like myself? How do you feel about the overall response? The fact that now, with you finishing the series, a lot of booktubers have jumped on it. There are, you know, every time I look to YouTube, I see Janny Wurts. I'm starting Janny Wurts, or that's my priority series. And
I'm
how do you feel about all
sitting here
that?
with a big roll of duct tape on my desk because most of the people that I've heard from are people that have written reviews or have mentioned I started this series in 1993. We've been with this thing for the long haul. Most of the ones that have commented, not all, there are a few that ripped right through and read the whole thing. But I'm sitting with the big roll of duct tape because I can't talk about what the ending is any more than I could when I was writing it, because so many people are just beginning the journey. And as Philip discovered at the midpoint, the whole bottom blew out of it and the whole ceiling blew out of it, and we're not done blowing the bottom out and the ceiling out. Trust me, there is so much more coming. So I will be really happy when there's enough people through this in the booktube community and in the book community that I can toss that roll of duct tape away, and not have to go, "Oh, I can't talk about that yet, can I?"
I must say, for Philip especially, who we all know and love, and he says, "What a feat Wolas is." It makes me happy just to know that such dedication could lead to such an accomplishment. It is truly something to celebrate. And this, of course, is from a quite accomplished author himself in Philip and an academic. I loved watching Philip's face, as I know he just read Peril's Gate. So clearly, obviously, I know where he is in the series, and seeing him and AP and Joanna, go through your books and this magnificent series, and just seeing him, just that feeling of, I can see he's being blown away, right? Just
I
just when
tried
you
to warn
thought,
him. I tried to warn him, but nobody believes the author. You knew it was coming. Yeah, there's Sarah Beth. See, there are a lot of people who've been there since the beginning, but new people are finding it for the first time in many years, and that's really exciting. That's really exciting.
and not only are they finding Words of Light and Shadow, they're finding your other series. A lot of people are simply going now, starting to go through your backlist and revisit from the first thing that you wrote.
Here and
Um,
there, here and there, but yeah, here and there, a little bit, a little bit. The books are out there; they can be found. So, is it a big snowball that's just going to build? I don't know where it's going to lead. The thing about anyone writing a book or anyone writing a series or anyone tackling an idea that's more complex than just what happens next, it's a huge accomplishment to get it down on the page. And it's a huge thrill when you find a reader that really sinks into it, reads the words, and sees the subtext, sees the whole grand plan. Not every reader is going to get that. So that's okay. Plenty of books.
yes, there are, but this is one that I feel. This series is one that I feel you will feel cheated if you don't give it a chance. If you thought there were certain series you had to read as a fantasy reader to feel well read, that's the feeling I think a lot of people are finding now, that they're like, oh my gosh, when they start, but I can't believe I haven't read this. Where they might have been focused on the Hobbes or the Jordans or the Ericsons. Yeah, this belongs in that pantheon. And they're like, oh my gosh, the light's going off. Like, Janny Wurts, yeah, I should have read this, a long time ago. And that's another expression that I love seeing on readers' faces when they're, discovering that, yeah, this is up there. This should be rated with all those great messages. Yeah, it should. And that gives me joy as one of your fans of your work, and and one of your admirers as a writer. I'll quickly say, Philip said, so excited for the rest of the series. Alas, he has to go now. All the best to you two, and chat for the rest of the discussion. Thank you so much, Philip, for stopping by. The amazing Philip Chase, who of course is a beloved booktuber and writer himself. Check out his channel. Check out his book series. There's
Oh yeah, Way of Adan is a lot of fun. He put a
so
lot of stuff into that. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's a wonderful read.
Yep, one of the most popular indie fantasy series going these days. So Jenny, you have now your the piece de resistance, A opus, completed. Now you're working on, nautical fantasy. You mentioned you're working on shorts for World of Terror, so still connected with your main series, with your world. And where do you think where do you think your writing is going to go over the next few decades? Where do you think you're going to take things such as, I mean, right now I know you may not be able to elaborate on a lot of things, but you've been with HarperCollins for a long time. They published your main series and most of your works. There's so many avenues open to you, I believe. Where do you think some of those avenues might take you in the future?
I have no idea. You say I've been with HarperCollins for a long time, but the publisher didn't stay static. I started out with Grafton way back when. Grafton got bought by Collins. Collins got bought by Harper. And so all the personnel have changed, all the people have changed, all of Grafton was one of the older, smaller, back when publishing was a handshake gentleman's business. And the US used to be like that too. There were 27 or 28 small lines, and they all published different sorts of books and they all got gobbled by the corporate machine. So when you say I've been with HarperCollins for a long time, I feel like not really, because it was such a fragmented journey. So is it a place that I can call home? I'll find out. With this new submission, I'll see what sort of enthusiasm that, because I'm really enthusiastic about the book. It'll be a lot of fun. So it will get finished no matter what becomes.
Well, we're enthusiastic to see it
But
come
we'll wait
out.
and see. So yeah, I don't know. And I know the entertainment industry as a whole does not have loyalty. It doesn't. You produce a bad book, you produce a bad sequel, there goes your creds out the window. So there is no loyalty in this industry. It's what they think they can earn money from at the bottom line right now, this minute, based on what you did before. Or you have someone that stumbles across it, reads it, and becomes a champion of it. And I don't know. I never met the people involved, so we'll see. It's an adventure.
Yes, but the possibilities, Janny, the possibilities could
Wide open.
be so incredible. I want to quickly put up Zero Zaku One. Thanks again for showing up, Zero Zaku One. Post and ask the question of Janny. How do you keep track of all your characters? By the way, just finished Curse of the Mist Wraith. There you go. You hooked another one, Janny. And ouch, can't wait for Ships of Marior.
Yeah, well, Ships of Marior will peel back more layers. You'll have a lot of fun. How did I keep track of the characters? Really simple. I have a notebook and I put down the name, when they born, when they died, what color their hair is, what color their eye is, who the parents were, all the little details that fall out. How did I keep track of them in the book? That's pretty simple too. I had spreadsheets, big ones. This is a whole novel for, which one is this that I grabbed? Sword of the Canon, Initiate's Trial. So across the top, I had factions and characters. And going down, I had the date and time. And this is what happened in each chapter or subchapter. So I could look at any one character or faction and see the whole spread for the whole book. And every single novel in the series had that. So I got to find this passage in that book where this happened, so I can make this scene 5 books later connect to that moment. I could pinpoint it exactly which chapter it was in. None of it electronic. It was all done by hand. And then I had rundowns, each chapter and what occurred and the date. So all done on paper. So, that was what kept me consistent. Because nobody in publishing has time to keep track of all that. Your copy editor doesn't. So people today, now they use electronic media. I can't, because the platforms that I went through to write this book changed so many times. The original spreadsheet program wouldn't even run on this computer today. So it was all on paper.
That is incredible. Zero Zaku, it seems very grateful. He says, that's perfect. Thank you. And he's going to follow your lead, Janny. He says he's going to do that himself.
A big pad of graph paper.
Sarah, yep, incredible. Love that.
And then I can show you because I've been messing with it all week to do those shorts. These are back history files. Goes by year, an event. So it's a big, and I can slip file cards into there. I can slip file cards out of there. And then again, I have graph paper sheets that list what's on the file card. So I know what date to look up what file card, and all the notes are jotted on the file card in more depth. So there's boxes of those timelines that go back thousands of years. So that's how I kept track of stuff.
Wow. Well, I can say one thing. Those will never crash. You will never, unless, God forbid there's a flood or a fire, those will last, forever. The one thing about going with paper is that there's a lot of foolproofing in some ways that accompanies going with paper rather than going electronically. So,
especially now with AI, I'm not giving that all to the internet or the cloud or anything. No, it was all started on paper back when all I had was a manual typewriter.
Wow.
And so I've just continued in that vein. And that way, if I upgraded the operating system and something didn't mesh with the new platform, didn't faze me at all. So yeah, I worry about a fire. That's the only thing I worry about. Because yeah, when the hurricanes come, I did what the yacht people do with the charts. Everything was in Ziploc bags.
When you look back and you have all this source material, oodles, boxes, reams of source material, and then you look, in your house and you have these volumes of these huge volumes, quite big volumes, voluminous novels. Do you look back and go sometimes, wow, I can't believe I did all this. I can't believe I wrote all this. I can't believe that I still have all this backstory and history that I haven't even touched, even though I have this huge main series. I can't believe that I could probably write into there for the next 1,000 years and I wouldn't run out of material. Did that ever astound you, even as the writer?
No,
that you go,
because
wow.
I see all the stuff I didn't write down, that's still up here. And also I have boxes of what I call scrap notes, things I wrote in the middle of the night, things I wrote while writing where I said, oh, this detail should connect to that and I don't want to forget it. Notebooks that I was working on in college that were never transferred to the file card system because they were in spiral notebooks, and the only way to sort that is tear the pages out. I haven't even gone into the language files. Those are huge too. So, does it astound me? No, because every time I dig into it, I always see the volumes and volumes and volumes that aren't written down or are in such a state that it would take somebody's very dedicated time to sort through it all and figure it out.
Wow. When I think about your series, the one thing I tried to ask myself the other day is what would be the one thing if you were trying to sell Janny's series to a new reader who was thinking about trying it? What would you say about it, right? And I know for me, if I had to be really uber succinct, that thing that sets you apart in my mind, of course, there's so many things. There's so many elements of your series that are just mind-boggling and just incredible. But of course, I always go back to prose. But what would you say? What would be the one thing that you feel about your series that really makes an impact on the readers? Well, I know it's tough, but looking at your series as a whole, what's that thing that's really gonna get them?
I have no idea, honestly, because there's so many aspects to this series, and what is the one that's going to pique that person's interest? I know what I was trying to do, but I was trying to do something so deep and so wide. If I said what I was trying to do, it would probably turn readers off. How do you describe it? Magic school for grown-ups? That's so shallow. If you describe it as a roadmap and a life map that runs on multiple levels, from the day-to-day stuff that you just go through when you live, from the fun banter to the crazy thinking to the intricate plot to the amused pleasure you have of seeing something open up and watching characters do things that are cool. There's that level, but there's also the roadmap of life that's underneath of all of that. There's a lot of information on how to live and a lot of information on how to make sense of experiences that you might not be proud of, a lot of information on how to process. But that's not going to attract a reader. They don't want a lecture, they want a story. So it's thousands of layers of threads and stories all built into one thing. And I think I wanted a book that did not have ties to time and space, so it wasn't tied to a fad or a period in literature. I wanted it to be timeless, and I wanted enough facets to it that every reader could find what would please them and take it away the best that I could. And I wanted to bring some of the experience to the page so that some people that cannot experience some of that stuff could walk away and say, I really felt like I was there. So there's so many angles. How do I encompass that into an elevator pitch? I really can't.
I think, and Zero Zaku, sorry, puts up. I would say a slow building wild ride with gut wrenching twists and turns. Buckle up. Yeah, that's
one way of putting it. But you need to have the patience because you don't get that huge gut wrench until you're fully invested. And I took my sweet time laying all the pieces in order. And I especially like a book where characters grow, where the character begins on the page is not the character who walks out of the page of the book at the end. They change, they develop, they mature, or they don't mature. And they fall backwards into their flaws. So a lot of books, they're very linear. They hand you this or that, and it's a very linear journey. I didn't want that feeling of a linear journey. I wanted a book you could read in your 20s and read it again in your 30s. It would be different. Read it again in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s. You would see a different aspect to it. So that's what I meant by timeless too. It would grow with your spirit. As you experience more life, you'll see more that's on the page.
I think, and I don't want to harp on this, but I know for me, your books have been life changing, and not just Wars Light and Shadow. Certainly, To Ride Hell's Chasm, which is my favorite book of all time, and it has been a life changing book. Again, I keep harping on your prose, and perhaps I should have rephrased the question. I mean, if someone asked me what I feel you would be best known for, I would say prose, and it's that gateway to the wonders that you've put on the page. But it is something that I know for me, it is addictive. It's something that I can't get enough of, and for some people, they find it more challenging. What do you have to say about your prose? What do you think about the way you write that is so unique and so different from any other writer? What do you think about your prose, Janny?
I don't think about it. It's just a part of the story. I don't know how to write any other way except the voice that story should be written in. And if you read some of my other work, sometimes the voice changes a bit. I think people run into trouble because they try to hurry through it. You need to take it phrase by phrase because each phrase builds on the phrase before it, and it's going to craft a level of depth. So each sentence is going to craft a level of depth that's more than what many books will deliver in one sentence. And part of the reason for that is I don't write passive verbs. I write active verbs, and an active verb requires thought to move it. So the was and the were is very easy to coast over the extra words that don't do anything. It, they, or was. It was this. It's real easy to coast over the it was and focus on the this. Now you've got it without struggling. I cut all those phrases out. I forced your mind to actively engage with that sentence because it was going to develop a level of connection that was going to be extremely powerful for when those gut-wrenching twists and turns came. So I did this deliberately, but people don't understand how to read it, that you're not going to get those coasting phrases that don't add anything to the meaning. Every phrase is going to be meaningful, and every phrase is going to connect to the next phrase and the next phrase. And so you have to slow down to take it all in. And if you try to hurry it and hop over things, you're going to get lost. And so I find some readers resent that because there aren't those vacuous little empty words in between everything else. So your concentration is forced to be present every minute. Now, think about this: when you get and you live your life, those moments where the clock stops, those moments where you lose track of everything around you but what you're focused on, those moments when all of yourself is fully engaged, that's when the time just flies. And those are the experiences that are going to be the deepest because all of your faculties are engaged. How many times in life now, with all of its distractions, do we get where all of our faculties are engaged? So, out on a sailboat, survival, that's going to engage all of your faculties, or you're going to be completely serene because nothing is challenging you at the moment. And you're just taking in that great wide world of the natural world. And it's almost like a meditation in between those packed moments where you're fighting for your survival because the elements are so much bigger than you and that piece of equipment that you're riding on. So I wrote books that force you to engage all of your faculties because they're going to score a deeper line. They're going to affect you. But not everybody is trained. We're trained to run through life now with only a fraction of our mind engaged. We want the quick answer. We want the quick text. We want the quick moment. And we're so distracted. Social media, phones, texting, people are, we're fragmented. These books were not written to fragment your mind. And they were written at a time when most people didn't fragment their mind to the degree they do now. So, in a way, they're out of their time and space because they're working against the grain. But if you have the patience to let all of your faculties become engaged, the people who love this series get it. And they say, yeah, it might take 200 pages to sink into that style. Might take a whole book to understand that I'm not going to let you down. I'm not going to keep throwing out stray stuff. It's all going to come together into this thundering finish. I can't make that happen. All I can do is do the work and put it out there. But if you think about those moments in your life where all your faculties were engaged, those are your most powerful moments.
But
So
that's
there's
why,
my prose style in a nutshell. It was designed to do that.
I think, and it was Chivapo that coined the phrase, I believe your work transcended prose. This, these, that's why your books will will survive, I believe, generations and still be looked to. That's why it's something that has surpassed other works that don't immerse you to that degree. And I think that's why people like myself can't get enough of your writing because again, it forces me. I don't want to be fragmented, but I am. That, as you said, that's the nature
It's
of
modern
our life.
life.
But when I read your books, there nothing else exists. I'm just reading a Janny Wurts book, and I'm rereading passages. I'm going back over the beauty of this particular line and this paragraph. I'm going back to try to understand something I feel that I didn't, and I am just immersed. And that is, I mean, who doesn't want that? I feel in their book, right? Entertainment is one level, and it doesn't mean I'm not entertained by your books because they are still immensely entertaining. But I also want to be immersed, and it's I find that there's only certain books now that give me that level of immersion. Only certain authors, and of course you're at the top of the list. But I feel I would be like it would be sad to never experience that level of immersion. I feel I would be missing something in my life if I
It's not
never.
the trend right now. It's certainly not the trend right now. And I miss it because I like reading an individual style in a book. But it's not the trend right now. And when you say, well, these books may last for the ages, whatever, that to me is, and for me saying, if I said that, it would be an arrogant statement because the one thing that we don't have the power to do is decide what books are going to last. You can look back in history at some of the most popular things that went on, some of the most popular composers that are completely forgotten now. There are many books that don't ever surface that are as monumental and they never get seen for whatever reason, but was it not worth doing the doing? So I think you do the best you can, you make your mark, you strike for whatever goal you want to strike, and then it's up to posterity, honestly, what is going to last. It's not up to us. So I write for the moment and I write the best of my capability and I write the way I write. Not my choice if it's going to last or not.
And Jenny, I think I would argue that most authors are looking, subconsciously or otherwise, for some kind of immortality in that their words will be read long after they're gone. How do you feel about, in your own words, how I know, like me, like every author, I think we give it our all. We leave it all on the field. You know, we do everything we can to write that amazing book, that amazing sentence, that amazing paragraph, that amazing passage or chapter. Now looking back on all your works, not just Wolas, the ones that you have to date, how do you feel? How close did you come to that standard that you want to set for yourself, your own bar? How do you feel about how you did?
Well, some writers say I'm embarrassed to go back and look at the stuff I did at the beginning of the career. I'm not. I'm not, because I know that at that given moment, I did the best could do with that story at that given time. And you let go. Once it's done, it's done. But I don't have that feeling that I did a terrible job, or I'm not embarrassed to look back. I say this is just another step on the ladder. And to me, if you connect to one person and it makes a difference in their life, that's enough. If you are lucky enough to hear about that, that's enough. What happens after I'm gone, I could care less because I'm not going to be here. It'll be up to the next generation and the generation after that to do with what they will. I've lived the life that created it, and I've created the structure. What meaning it has is no longer mine. It's the next person in line who reads it. So you read a book, it's no longer that author's book anymore. It's that book plus the experience I bring to that book. So it has an infinite number of reflections, and they're all going to be different. So that's not up to me or you.
I agree. Chibo comments, yes, even mid-teens, when I found this series after reading Master of Whitestorm, Cycle of Fire, etc., I was sucked in and have never looked back. Without fail, I can start one and be fully immersed into with Eric, Heathland, etc., from cafe or food court or wherever, to stand on the deck of the Ketian and beside Erathon every step in Peril's Gate. I agree, Chimapo. Now I know there's elements of Jenny's work, facts in the history of her universe that I will now know better than, real history. There are characters that will live in my mind more than real historical characters that actually existed. And that's the generous gift that Janny's given us, who love her books. And that's something that I absolutely treasure. Baggins says, hey T Baggins, howdy. Janny, this is probably almost impossible to answer, but I'm going to give it a shot anyways. I know for me, obviously I have a very short, I've only published 4 books. And but I can tell you which one is my favorite. Not necessarily the one I think is the best written, in my opinion, but I can tell you pretty well which one is my favorite and which one means, something to me. And not that I don't love all my books, and for me as the author, right? Just as every reader will have an individual favorite of your work. What's the favorite book you've ever written? What's the book that, if you had to pick, do you have a favorite It's kind of like asking what your
I
favorite
have a
child is
terrible
right now.
time with this because everybody's saying, "Oh, what is your 10 favorite reads?" or what's your favorite flavor of ice cream?" or what's your and it's like I'm not an indecisive person, but I like each thing for itself. So how do you pick a favorite? I can read a Guy Kay book, and I love a Guy Kay book for certain aspects of it. I can read an Anna Smith Spark book, and I love that work for a different reason. I can read your work, A Drowned Kingdom, and I can love it for the absolute raw kill it because it's a war to the very refined flawed characters and what they struggle with. I mean, there's so many aspects. I can read a Philip Chase book and admire how he had so many characters from so many different backgrounds, and not all of them were good people, but the ones that kept striving to better themselves and failed, and the ones that were despicable at the beginning that realized how despicable they were, the journeys that they go through, it's very powerful. I just read Miles Cameron's Deep Black, and it's a stunning book. So how do you pick a favorite? Because each one is individual. It's like saying, I only want to meet one person in my life. Everybody has this treasure trove of differences. And so when I look back at what I've written, well, this is my favorite today because I want to relax and it's a simpler book, or this is my favorite today because some of those twists and turns were really gut wrenching. And, I don't have a favorite because in the moment, in the moment of writing that book, I put everything I had into it, and I can still capture that space and still feel that space was valid. Even if I've outgrown it, it's still valid.
Yeah, and I can certainly see that. I know for me, why, all the reasons why To Ride Tells Chasm is my favorite book for you, from you. But I'm saying that now because I haven't read everything that you've written yet. So who knows? That could change. But I have to say that there's a difference between my favorite book from a purely, entertainment. I would read this over and over and over again. I can't stop thinking about it. Versus the books that and this is amazing that T. Baggins is putting up this question. Books T. Baggins is asking, he or she, they are asking, is there a book, Janny, that's affected you or changed you during the writing process? That's actually an even better question than the one I was getting to, but I will get to mine afterwards. But I'd like to put a T. Baggins question up there.
I'd flip that upside down and I'd say, what event in my life affected me so deeply and changed me that I poured into the writing process? So the book actually would be second. The book didn't create the change. The life experience created the change that in turn became indelibly inscribed into the book. The best quote I ever heard about writing is, reading a book or writing a story is the gift of experience given to someone else. So that's part of the reason why I spread out and did a lot of things and still do a lot of things in my life, because those experiences, even just day to day getting along with people, everybody has moments where you don't get along and you fight regret because somehow you're not working with somebody well, and you work with that problem in your mind maybe for 10 years, and then suddenly you get a chance and you can reconcile it with that person, and then that relationship changes. That kind of experience, life isn't static. My life hasn't been static. My experience haven't been static. So I haven't been static as a person. Um, you don't change so much as you deepen. You deepen what you know, and then what you do doesn't necessarily change. I'm still a writer, but I just do it better and I bring more layers to it. So that's what affects my writing process. Did I have an experience? Did I go through a good experience or a bad experience? Did I read something that sparked a chord and made me pursue something? And what came out of that is what you see on the page.
That's an exceptional response. Which is true To a great question from T Baggins. Thank you for asking. My question was, and then there's another question after I want to get to that popped in the chat. That I know for me, which books I've written thus far in my very short, life so far as an author, which books affected me the most, were the hardest to write for whatever
Oh,
reason.
hard to write. Yeah, sometimes you get that.
What was that book for you? I know for me, it was my second book, The Last of the Atlanteans. I think it was potentially a combination of imposter syndrome and just feeling that I had to nail this book, particularly after my first book, and what small measure of success I had. What was that book for you that really just sapped you for whatever reason?
Initiate's Trial and Destiny's Conflict were very hard to write, because I knew what I was building towards. And it's like the early stage of this series. People read it and they go, oh, yeah, this is classic fantasy, but they don't know what I'm building towards. So they really have no clue because it's all cardboard and it's going to get ripped apart. Those books were very hard to write because so much of what was happening in those books is outside the envelope. Words don't go there. I was writing experiences that don't have language and trying to make the emotional impact of experiences that don't have language. We don't have words. Very, very, very tough. People don't factor in when they run their lives creatively that creativity waxes and wanes. You have periods where things write very smoothly, and you have periods where it's pulling teeth. And let me tell you, rejoice and enjoy the times it goes easy, because for every one time it goes easy, there's 4 times where it may go really hard. Storm Warden, very difficult book to write. Why? Didn't make sense why it was so difficult to write. The trick is the reader won't know. So whether it's brain chemistry, whether it's aging, whether it's life experiences changing, whether it's menopause, whether it's good God only knows midlife crisis, some books are easy to write and some books are hard. So was it because of the material on the page? Not really. Sometimes it was just the moment. You lost a parent or something happened and you just got to write through it. But to me, I think the hardest scenes to write are those where language doesn't go there. You're trying to deliver an experience that you have a piece of that experience or maybe all of that experience firsthand. I've had some experiences that were right off the edge of the envelope. And how do you put that in words when the words our language is made for very concrete physical reality and you're stepping into something that's so much deeper? How do you say that in words where words don't exist? So part of the reason why the style of these books is so dense is to prepare for those kind of scenes, because I knew they were coming, and how to prepare the reader so that the language didn't suddenly get different and lose them.
Wow. Yep. No, and I feel you on that. I think before I get into this next question, I do have to follow up then, based on what you're saying, was what was the book that almost wrote itself? That just everything it almost flew off the page.
Hell's Chasm. It's probably the easiest book I ever wrote. It just, once I got that first chapter down, first chapter took like 40 days to get down. Then the whole rest of the book just went like on fire.
Wow.
And the one I'm working on right now, that small little sailing, it's going on fire pretty much in very much the same way, which is a relief because the last 2 arcs of the big series were very difficult because there was so much going into those words.
Yeah, and again,
yeah, Jared, you haven't seen it yet. You're still getting into the. Wait till you get into arc 4, then you'll see what I'm talking about.
The wonderful Jared from the Fantasy Thinker.
Yes.
Check out his channel. He is an amazing gent. Thank you so much, Jared, for stopping by. We really appreciate it. And I also have to quickly put up another amazing book tour.
Oh yeah, Brian's here too.
See, Janny brings all the fabulous people out. Brian says, "I can't believe I missed the start. We'll watch the replay. Love you both. Love you too, my friend.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Awesome to see you. Hope you're doing well." This is a question. I'm sorry, I listed. It was from FDSFGS7125. What are the odds that we'll see that Way Lies Camelot in ebook someday?
Oh gosh, all those manuscripts were done on a typewriter. There's no e-formatted text for any of that. I don't have electronic files for any of those stories in that book because they were all pre-computer age, just about most of them. Maybe 2 stories, if that. So I would have to type the whole thing and enter it. So yeah, I imagine that eventually I'll get to it. But what do you do? It's the perpetual question. Do you create a new book or do you retread the old material? But I ought to. I mean, I could be putting those up as singleton short stories or do the whole book. I could, but it's who's going to do the data entry or do the scanning of the pages and correct all of the little problems that, scan errors. I don't even have the material. I don't have the hardware to do the scan from the book pages. So yeah, help. It's just one of me.
Is there a particular book that you feel, whether it's a part of a series or whether it's a standalone, that you wish you wrote something more in the story that you might one day, or you might not, but is there a particular book that you wish, and it could be you want to write another book in Wars Light Shadow, could be from any one of your series, but
I'll go back in history. I could even go forward into the future history because there's really incredible things happen after the series is over down the line. Problem is, if I write that stuff, it's kind of useless because people have to read the series first because there would be spoilers. So you'd be cutting down your audience. Is there anything that I would have put in any of the books that I published already? No, each of those books went the way I wanted them to go. There's nothing more or nothing was cut out of them that I would have added. Cycle of Fire, I could write a 4th book to that. It's an outline. I could do it. But is it worth my time to do it? Because the readership for it right now, this moment in time, would be extremely small. 90% of people have never heard of it. You see people, oh, I want a list of books from the 80s or the 90s. You don't see my backlist coming up, but they were written in that time. There were books before Daughter of the Empire. Lots of them. So yeah, I could write a 4th in that series, but is it worth my time as opposed to doing something new? Because there would be a limited audience because nobody's heard of those books. They pretty much dropped off the map, even though they're out in audio and even though they're out in ebook. And in the case of Britain, you can get some of them in paper. Nobody knows they're there. And there's so much material coming out every day with indie books and, there's just a massive amount of a torrent of books. So unless I had some kind of advertising machine to make those books known, would I go back and write that 4th book? Time will tell. I could have a crash breakthrough like Martha Wells did, and suddenly, wham, everybody discovers your work because of one novella, and that could revitalize the backlist. Then something could happen. But when you're looking at all these projects you want to do and how much time do you have, and I've got like a list of 14 novels I could write right now, all completed ideas. Am I going to have time to write them all? So picking and choosing on the smorgasbord, and for every novel you write, there's a painting or a slew of paintings won't get done. How much? I wish I could clone myself. I could keep myself busy for the next 150 years and not be done all the things I'd like to do. Well, hey, who wouldn't want the history of Athera and full color illustrations?
Absolutely. Oh, Janny, absolutely.
And I can only put a fraction of it in there.
Oh my gosh. That a compendium with that to me would be just,
it would be absolutely freaking awesome. But who's going to pay my living? Because it's only me. There's no spouse or no bunch of helpers or no, it's only me.
Well,
yeah, it would be pretty exciting. I'm knocking some of the scrap notes into order so that somebody could make sense of them, because the way they were, I was the one that knew, well, this notebook has that section and that card file has that, and the rest of this is in my head because I had no chance to write it down, and the rest of it is in the scrap carton it's on napkins, literally. It was written by flashlight in the middle of the night.
Well, I can say I constantly get asked, "Hey, are there any books that were written, in the '80s or '90s that I always refer people, of course, Jenny, to your work because there are a lot of readers out there that I want to read old school fantasy, old school classic fantasy,
It
classic
isn't
from."
old school. There's so many books that were written on the margin that were not the going Tolkien clone, or we're not the going Magic School, or we're not the going epic fantasy written by a man. There are so many books that were written for marginal readers, marginal characters, marginal. There's an incredible volume of work, and it's called the Midlist, but they weren't printed in enough volume to show up in a used bookstore. They weren't. They were pre-internet, so they've just dropped off the radar and they aren't known. But they're an incredible wealth of books that are well worth the time, and they're every bit as modern as books that are written right now. They aren't, quote, old school, they just aren't known, but they took more chances back then, and they were written in a way that was more original than many of the books that became very popular. They sort of went the road less traveled by, but there's some very powerful books that are just. I got a library full of them upstairs and a memory that goes back like file cards, thousands of books. So I can guarantee you I can connect you to a book that was written in the 80s or the 90s or the 70s that you would love, but you'll never have heard of it because it wasn't the thing that did 80,000 copies.
Well, there you go, folks. So for your Rex, follow Janny. She can give you those Rex that you're looking for that go back a few decades. Because, like I said, I constantly get asked by readers, that readers are born in a certain generation. Hey, where do I find those underrated gems and those books back from the? So and
Put
again.
me on a YouTube channel where we're talking books and forget the author half of me. Just talk about books.
Well, we're gonna have to have you back then, and
Oh,
we'll just have a
so
recommendation.
they always all the booktubers get together and they all talk about the books, but it's like, gosh, I listen to those videos and I go, there's a whole treasure trove of books that you haven't even heard of that would blow your mind.
Okay, it's a
That
deal
would
then.
just knock you out of the water.
It's a deal then. We're gonna have you're gonna
Just
come
as a
back.
reader, because I've treaded through a lot of books over the years. I've gone through a lot of books.
Okay, it's a deal. We're gonna have you back in the future, and we're just gonna do
Talk
Rex.
books.
It's gonna talk books, talk Rex. That's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna hold you that, Janny. When okay, obviously clearly a fan says, "Thank you for all your novels, Janny." From your longtime fan from down under.
Well,
So,
thank you for being there.
coming from
Australia is a really
Australia, I
beautiful
presume.
place. Yeah, Australia is really a beautiful place.
There is a question from Zero Zaku One. Janny, what's your approach to writing politics in your novels?
Well, I sure don't want it to connect to the here and now. That's why I'm writing fantasy. Because one of the problems with talking about the present is you hit everybody's hot button really, really fast. So way back when in the 80s, 70s, when I started to write, I said, I'm going to do fantasy because I can handle all the hot issues with the gloves off. And people can dismiss it because it's not real, or they can get angry with it, but I'm not going under the skin of the things that they're going crazy about right now because it's too hot a topic. People get too worked up. Politics and religion are just so fantasy enables you can handle the hot topic without burning. And it's only a book, so it doesn't threaten. So that's my approach to writing politics, is write it in fantasy or SF, because you can do a very elegant job of eviscerating the idea without upsetting people's near and dear sensibilities and getting them angry, and then they want to kill you, literally.
And you do it so adroitly, so adeptly, Janny. And that's one of the things I most admire about your writing. And obviously, from reading my books that, I try to do the same. So the FDS, FGS 7125 says, that they want to ask a question that's been burning them the most. It's probably a spoiler for some of the mysteries. Well, why don't you ask? The worst that Janny can say is that she can't tell you because it is a spoiler. FDS FGS 7125. So maybe you shoot your shot and see
Ask
what
it
happens.
anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Fancy thinker. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Jared is.
I won't spoil anything, but I can maybe go off on a tangent.
There you go. One okay says too much coming out these days and writing's too similar to everything from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I find Janny's books are usually refreshing, like two other authors I read, Brust and A.D. Foster. So,
Well, I would say there's an awful lot in the 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s that's strikingly original that you've never heard of because midlist books, and also never published in any format but mass market paperback, and they probably fell apart because they were so well loved, or low press run, because back in those days some books didn't get gigantic press runs. Publisher printed just enough to get them out there, and then went on and did another book by that author and another book by that author, and they built them up. And Motisette is a writer like that, where book after book after book, but you don't see that one mentioned very often. Very idea-driven fantasy, but he wrote a lot of books, probably still writing. So there's a lot of stuff that's highly original, but because it didn't tread the center line of what everybody wanted to see right now, it didn't get the million reprints, but it doesn't make the ideas in those books any less valued. In fact, many times they were experimenting with ideas that people consider cutting edge right now. And they were cutting edge back then as they would be today. And people are shocked. They go, whoa, this book doesn't read like a book was written in the 80s. But it was heavily cutting edge. It was ahead of its time.
well, I think, Jenny, that from when you were writing, and even now you continue to be ahead of your time. Quickly, the Andrew Wizardly reads. The wonderful Andrew says, two amazing people from an amazing person such as Andrew. That's a huge compliment. Thank you, Andrew. Check out Andrew's channel. He is a wonderful booktuber. For those of you who may not know him, I'm sure most of you do. Andrew is fabulous. Does some great content.
If you could generate energy from the enthusiasm of BookTube, you could power the world.
Yes, agreed. And
Andrew's right up there.
Andrew's right up there. He could power quite a bit. He says, "Facts. I'm always discovering new stuff." There's another question from one. Okay, who are your favorite modern writers?
We're back into this favorite. I hate saying who are my favorites because I like each book or each author for a different thing. So what kind of favorite do you want? It's the book I'm reading right now most often. So favorite modern writers. I like this writer for that. I like that writer for that. I just finished Artifact Space. I like the way Miles Cameron handled the intricacy of a spaceship that was very large but had a crew that was very tight-backed and in battle situations, and the way he built the plot. It was a powerful read. I read Anna Smith Spark recently, or Anna Spark Smith. I always get her backwards. And I call her the Gene Wolfe of fantasy writers, with the theme of parenting at the center of it all. But she doesn't get the credit she deserves, not like Gene Wolfe does. So, what favorite writers do I have? I like reading P.L. Stewart for your big bloody battles and your flawed heroes and your complex views of situations where people don't always make the right choices, even when they know what the right choice probably is. So different books bring out a different favorite. I've never, anytime somebody says, give me a favorite list, I'll give you 100 books because they're the top of their class in what they're doing. But can I pick out one that I like better than another? No, I'm not that one faceted. Sorry.
No, I hear you, Jenny. Andrew may have popped in late. Just part of this question was asked, but just for Andrew's sake, you might, if you're willing to cover just a few things. Andrew did ask, "What's next for you, Jenny?" I think just in general, and and I guess you had
All
partially
right,
answered
what's next for me, Andrew? I'll tell you. I'm working on a little sailing standalone. It's a nautical fantasy. It's out under submission right now. It'll be fun. It'll be raunchy. It'll be thrilling. It'll have a lot of high stakes situations, and there will be an emerging thread that rises as the book goes on. So it will feel a little episodic at first, but if you like Firefly, you would like this, but it's going to be more unified than that. So that's what's next for me on that front. I'm also working on shorts that go back into the world from the big series so that I can flesh out certain things that happened hundreds or thousands of years ago. So I'm doing that. And then I have a patch of artwork that's on the boards to add to other writing projects or things that may come up in the future that I can't talk about because I don't consider anything real until there's a contract in my hot little hands with a signature on it. Other than that, it's just talk. But I have been doodling some things because if this project comes through, there'll be a lot of work on my plate to make it happen. So it's the usual not enough hands and a lot of things on the boards to get done. And I'm excited about it. But, life gets crazy.
Well, we are excited to see what's ahead next for you,
So
Janny.
that's what ahead for me. And I'd like to see it. The other thing I'm doing is I'm still gunning to get this blasted series well known enough that we can get it into audiobook. Just want that to happen in the worst way.
Well, those of us who love your work will keep shouting to the heavens, and hopefully HarperCollins will take note.
And look for the next Grimrock Press release of Mistress of the Empire. All that art is complete and turned in, so they should be producing that soon.
Fabulous. See that? Yeah.
So that project will be finished.
Now looks like FDS FGS 725 took their shot and says, "All right."
No, you won't.
Oh, there you go. You got your answer. See, asking you shall receive. FDS FGS 725.
But there's major things that occur at the end of that indicate what the end of the Third Age might be. But no, you will not see the end of the Third Age because it's much, much bigger than this one piece of story. This was just the most strife-filled section of the Third Age, as the prologue tells you straight out.
FDS, so I'm just going to skip ahead here quickly. Just also says, I have a couple questions, but I already know that you're staying mum on one regarding Eastgate and what's behind it.
I know. I know it's there. Let me just throw you a teaser on that. In the massive section of back history files that I have for this world, this universe, not only is there ages, but there's eras. There's also this one little interesting file called Celestial Events. So your Eastgate question is going to connect to that.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I love it.
Yeah, that'll make you think. You're not gonna necessarily know what I was talking about there, but yeah, celestial events, that's connected to the Eastgate.
I love it. Azirazaka one quickly says confirmation he's reading and Andrew says
Bruce is a lot of fun.
Recently.
Motorset's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
If you haven't read Barbara Hambly, check out Barbara Hambly. If you haven't read Carol Bird, check out Carol Bird. If you haven't read C.J. Cherry, boy, talk about political fantasy. She's the wizard at it. Davy Jones is another one. Yep, but she hadn't finished hers. Damn it.
Yeah.
C.S. Friedman is another one. You want to read something for spooky season? Check out C.S. Friedman.
Those are some great recs. One more from FDS FG 7125, and the other regarding whether the fellowship would ever elevate another line to hiking status.
No, that won't happen. That will not happen again. Ooh, you have to have read all the way through the series to understand why.
See what you're getting when you ask? FDS FGS 725. Isn't that awesome? I'm just gonna again, I don't want to lose track of this other question. Janny, which writers, older or more recent, do you think handle political intrigue well, no matter the genre?
Well, I would say C.J. Cherry. I would say Adrian Tchaikovsky. Absolutely, Adrian. Let me think who else for political complexity. I'm going to tell you Katie Waitman that you've never heard of. Katie Waitman wrote a book called The Marrow Tree. Another one would be Matthew Woodring Stover that wrote the Cane books. I would say Paul Stewart. I would say Philip Chase probably did a pretty good job of it. I would say probably John Gwynne and his Faithful and Fallen probably did a pretty good job of it. But I think the master at it is probably C.J. Cherry. She is just can write a powder keg of a book, all based on intrigue and political and people misunderstanding or one faction running with an idea and headlong into human flaws, and just she's very, very good at political. So those would be my top picks for those in the fantasy and science fiction genre, off the top of my head, because you got to remember every book ever read. There's probably 15 that are slipping my mind that I'll get off in an hour and go, oh damn, I should have mentioned that one too. Yeah, Gene Wolfe is another one, though. I look at his stuff as more perspective oriented. Nautical, I have to tell you, no, because most of these guys that are writing nautical have not sailed, and it shows. R.J. Barker did a pretty good job of it. Pretty good job. I would say who wrote into Sherwood Smith did a pretty good job in The Fox. But to somebody who's actually been there, done that. So even Patrick O'Brien didn't sail. He did. He was a wizard at research, but he didn't sail.
Wow. Yeah, the life experience, accumulating that life experience, that is at a premium. Thanks.
Well, there are things about sailing that people who don't sail think they know, but they don't know. How many books have you read, Paul? How many books have you read where they describe being becalmed, okay? And they tell you, we're becalmed, and everything is so still, and it's so quiet, and they'll tell you, the silence drove you mad, right? How many, is it, have you read a book that
I've read dozens of books like that.
Okay. Let me tell you about being becalmed in a sailboat. Everything that would normally be under tension is not. And there's just enough residual swell that there's just enough residual everything. Everything creaks, everything bangs, the noise will drive you absolutely fucking nuts because it's the noisiest, most irritating, the little clink of the stuff in the lockers, the pans and the pots, the creak of the hull that you don't normally hear when you're underway, the noises of the rigging, the banging of the booms just slatting back and forth just enough. Being becalmed is it's like Chinese water drip torture because the sounds will drive you crazy because they're not rhythmic and they don't go away and there's nothing to do and there's nothing to get away from it. So you read a book and immediately you're becalmed. It wasn't written by a sailor because within 4 or 5 hours, far or less 4 or 5 days, you want to kill somebody.
And see, no substitute for the practical experience, the lived experience, and writing with authenticity, because unless you've done that, you're not going to be able to comprehend that great example becalmed means for the people on the ship, a shit ton of noise. So
yeah. It's the most irritating collection of noises you can possibly, it's like sitting next to somebody that has a nervous tick and they're pounding their pencil on the desk. Imagine that multiplied by 15 other things. It's the most irritating thing where all those things that are normally under tension when there's wind are not.
Wow.
And even if the water looks mirror sheen, flat, calm, there's still that residual swell and it's still going to roll you around. Wow,
that is incredible. FDS 725. If you got the money, I don't think Janny
Ask
will
him.
complain. I don't
Ask
think Janny
him.
will complain.
Ask him.
I don't think she'll complain. Andrew says 45 Carol books. Carol Berg on the shelf and have J.B. Jones, C.S. Freeman.
Yeah, well, you should give him a try. What do you got on the shelf by Carol Berg?
Yeah, maybe he'll respond to that. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for stopping.
Be
So
safe
yeah,
and well.
what do you got by? What do you have? Oh gosh, you got R.M. Melick. Do you have Jerusalem Fire by any chance, or do you have the Myriad? Which one is it?
From Jenny's so amazed.
The Myriad is a space opera that's really fun, and it's a parody. And probably if you're American, you're going to love it. If you have Jerusalem Fire, it's a powerful book. It's serious, but nobody's heard of R.M. Melick, and it's a crime.
Wow.
You have Faded Sun. Yeah, that's a good Halloween book. Oh no, C.J. Cherry. Yeah, there's one of her early efforts at political fantasy, and it's excellent. Faded Sun is really cool. The thing about Cherry is you can reread her 40 years later, and it still carries water. Her books don't age.
That's going to be your books, Janny. That's going to be, that is your books because you started decades ago now.
Yeah, Faded Sun. It reads really quickly. They're short books, and it's really well done. I love that series.
I'm going to quickly skip ahead to this one. One more thing before I head off. These might have mentioned the series, and I've just missed it. Would you have to know offhand what are the names for the buffer worlds in America? No. And Scatting. And says asking so I can update the wiki with the info if you do.
Well, when I get there.
Oh, yes. Zero Zaku 1 asks, Jenny, what type of music do you listen to? And
okay, it's pretty broad. I like everything, but I do not like jazz, and I do not like blue notes in anything. That dissonance just goes crazy. So give me classical, give me British, and almost any world music that's folklore. Give me stuff that's the stuff that was South African that Paul Simon did, and Mombasa's. Oh, those stuff was so beautiful. It brought me to tears. I listen to a lot of electronic. So it's a very broad variety, but the stuff that's blues or depressing or jazz, it just makes me depressed. I'm very affected emotionally by music. So things that are very, very dissonant or blue notes or very sad or very, it just tears me up. I can't listen to that.
That answers
brings my mood right down.
That answers Zero's which bands with artists from Zero Zaku's question.
Mike Oldfield, Moody Blues. Yes. U2.
Tangerine Dream.
Tangerine Dream. Absolutely. Got a whole shelf of that stuff.
Thanks for coming by, FDS, FJS, FGS 7125, who's heading out. I really appreciate that. Stopping by and all the questions for Janny, and those were excellent. And says Moody's forever.
Yeah, they're great. They're wonderful. That sound is so unique. You know, I'm really into the rock bands when they all sounded different. Kansas and ELO.
Yeah, Electrified University.
Palmer. Yeah. So when you could really say, wow, you know, Jefferson Airplane. But then when things started sounding really the same, but you know, some of the stuff I liked, I even like some of the disco. I used to drive him crazy because I would play Men Without Hats when I was painting.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Jenny, I have to ask, this is something that I know you've answered this question before, but just for our audience and people watching later, where do you recommend that we start? That I know it depends on the reader, depends on taste. Where do you recommend is a great place for readers to start entry to your books? What particular books or series do you recommend that? Never read Janny Wurts before, always heard about her, curious, want to know, where does that reader start?
I hate this question because it's different for everybody. If you're a linear reader and you want a linear plot, go read Sorcerer's Legacy, which was my first, but it's really different than anything else. I don't usually write love stories. If you want to read The Empire, that seems to be the most popular one. So Cycle of Fire and The Empire maybe are on a par. I don't know. If you like sword and sorcery with a small cast of characters and you don't want lots of characters, and you don't mind a book that starts episodic but builds into a bigger plot, then go for Master of Whitestorm because you can pick it up and put it down. But if you want something that's more like my modern style and you just want a standalone, I'd say Hell's Chasm is a good starter. And then go into Light and Shadow. And if you want something seriously deep, if you're a reader like AP or Philip that you really like to absorb what you're reading and you want the experience, go for the big one. But I don't do the same thing every time. And that's one thing that throws people. If you hated this book, you might like that book because I absolutely don't do the same thing twice. So if you say, oh, I really didn't like that book and I didn't like the ending, well, you're not going to get that ending ever again because I don't do the same book twice.
I have to say that I feel, and in my very, very unexpert opinion, for me, I think Throughout Hell's Chasm was a perfect entry point into Wars Light Shadow, specifically because of the prose.
It is absolutely, but if you think the prose is going to be too thick for you and you want a book that's written a little bit more streamlined, then go for any of the 3 or 5 earlier books, the trilogy or the 2 other standalones that I did, because they're quicker reads. They still are going to have qualities that the other books have, but they were not done to as complex a level. Some people say, oh, I don't want a big cast of characters. So you can pick one of the earlier books and it will have a smaller cast.
I'm seeing Jared says, started with Curse and will stick to recommending that.
For some people going for the deep one, but if you're 15 years old, that's not the book you want to start with because you don't have the life experience for it yet. Not to say that there are not some 15-year-olds that do. They will be the exception rather than the rule.
I'd be remiss if not shouting out, and Janny, correct me, whose channel it's actually on because there's so many people involved. Jared is also part of a read along of the Wars of Light and Shadow. Several amazing people involved. I think just correct me on, you've appeared as well, haven't you, Janny, in some of their
Yeah, I think maybe one. Yeah, usually they finish the book and then they'll schedule one. So yeah, they're just finishing Trader's Knot right now, and don't read the last chapter set or so after dark unless you want a spooky season.
Yeah, I think it's Chris Mohan is on that. Jared is on that. Rainy Mount, I believe, is on that. I'm trying to remember all the.
Chivico usually shows up.
Chivico shows up. Yeah, I'm trying to remember all the people who are involved. Maybe Fancy, I think, or someone can correct me on that. He said Trader's Knot coming soon. So maybe Jared, if you can kind of shout out who else is involved, just for our recollection, and your wonderful, deep dive into Janny's series. One, okay, says, which authors were your first dip into fantasy?
My library did not stock fantasy and science fiction, so I read everything else until I stumbled on Roger Zelazny, and that's probably the first. Tolkien, actually. I found Tolkien in my school library when I was 14. So that was my first fantasy ever. And besides fairy tales, because there wasn't fantasy. There didn't have a genre back then. So you read Greek myths and you read fantasy and maybe you read Mary Stewart's Crystal Cave. But I consider my big entry to fantasy was finding Tolkien at 14 and Roger Zelazny probably when I was 15. And then college was when I began to catch up with what I'd missed. So I did not grow up as the nerd that read fantasy and science fiction. I read everything else.
Well, those are some great places to start. Just quickly from Jared, Trader's Knot is coming soon. Should we go?
Tomorrow. Is that the finish of it? For anybody listening, anybody could join that discussion.
Yeah, it's Varsha, Jared, Chris, Megan's Hobbit Hole Books, Steve from Page Chewing, Rob from Bookends and Biscuits. Life Stuff is both come away, but they're still following. So yeah, that's amazing. Those are some great people involved, some great tubers and members of the community. So I recommend you check out that deep dive especially if you're up to date with where they are in their reading. So just wonderful to see these analysis. And in this case, chapter by chapter of your work.
Janny, you're doing a pretty good job with it.
Oh yeah, those are some fantastic people. So I'm sure they're doing a great job. Absolutely. Janny, oh my gosh, it's an hour and a half. I cannot believe the time. It just I don't know where it goes. Just quickly, no one, okay, we had the same problem here in Ivory's. Our first was A. Van Gogh, but there was no fancy, and that was 1968. The time just flies. We could talk for hours, but I want to respect your time. I know it's late. I just want to give you the opportunity for the rare person who doesn't know where to find you in social media, where to buy your books, etc., to kind of let people know where to find you in social media, where you're most active, where to buy all your books. If you wouldn't mind just slaying that out for everyone.
Well, I'm the only Janny Wurts in the world, so you search my name spelled correctly, you will find my website. There's a forum there on Twitter. I refuse to call it what the bozo wants us to call it. I have a Goodreads account, so I will see things that would pop there. I pop through Page Chewing forum every now and then. I pop through sometimes the YouTubers live chats, but I'm not hard to find and I'm easy to reach because my email is very, very public. So you can always write me.
The one thing I will say about Janny is, I think perhaps some of us might have an impression that certain well-known, popular, and again, I will use the word iconic, but Janny is the best one that fits, wouldn't be so accessible and, so kind and so giving of their time and willing to engage with people. But Janny, that is you. You're so helpful. You're so supportive of everyone. You're just a pillar of the community, alongside being such a phenomenal writer that we all eminently respect. And I think it is just one of the things we all love about you. And, so for those of you in the chat, obviously most of you follow Janny and know more about her as I do. But if you're wondering, oh my gosh, it's Janny Wurts. Yes, it's Janny Wurts, but, reach out if you have a question. Reach out if you have a comment, something great to say about her work. She is someone who, again, is so giving with her time and helps out so many people in the community behind the scenes, things that we wouldn't even realize. So that's one of the things about Janny that again, that's one of the reasons why we love her. So, thanks, Jared. Yep, I would love to jump in at some point, time permitting. I know you guys again are doing a great job. Of course, I've finished the series, so hopefully I might have something cogent to add here and there. So, but you guys are doing a wonderful job. So Janny, I'll just leave you any ultimate closing remarks before we sign off.
Well, thanks for everybody for being here, and the community on BookTube is just so phenomenal. I have met so many enthusiastic people that love what they're doing, and it just shines, and it's a real light in a world where social media can be a very dark place and bring out the worst of the people. What I see with the fantasy and science fiction BookTube community is people who are bringing about the best in each other. And that is so rewarding and redeeming to see. So I want to thank all of you for doing what you do. You have far more impact than you may realize and far more reach.
Very well said, Janny. And we all want to continue to keep your work in the forefront of consciousness on social media because it is so deserving. I want to echo Janny and thank you so much everyone who joined in the chat, who's watching live, who will watch the replay. You are what makes this kind of long form content. Absolutely incredible. So thank you so much for joining us and for watching later. Once again, we had the phenomenal, the incomparable Janny Wurts tonight. And I think it was just a marvelous discussion, and I feel a better person for it. So thank you, Janny, for all you do. And again, I say about Janny is that, yes, she's my favorite author, and yes, she makes me want to be not only a better person but a better writer. So it's a very, very high bar, I know, but that's the kind of bar that I personally am striving for, and that's because of Janny. So everyone, wherever you are, have a wonderful morning, day, afternoon, night, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.